Get out of there. Get out of that moss. Get out of that moss. There he is. Like I said, he was in that moss. He's even got a chunk of moss right on his little nose. Let's rinse some moss off that little fuzzabou. You know, I really like to put fish back and give somebody else a chance to fish them. You know, this little chartreuse fuzzabou is really an effective fly. Let's go in the fly tying room and let me teach you how to tie it. This is a fuzzabou. We can fish this fly in sinking condition. We can fish this fly anywhere from 3 to 15 feet of water according to the size of lead eye that we use. We'll start out tying the fly on a 33/66. This is a mustad hook and it's a good bass hook. We're bringing a hook out by TMCO, which is a bass hook. Right as of right now, it's not out. We're going to tie a weed guard on there because everywhere we find bass almost, that we're going to have some type of cover. We're either going to have logs, weed beds, whatever. So we need this monofilament on here. We'll use hard mason monofilament for this weed guard because it softens less than any other monofilament does in water. For the tail, we'll use about 6 blood feathers. For the flash on each side, we'll use crystal flash. The body on this fly, we're going to use just a regular saddle feather, and we're going to palmer it forward to about half the hook shank length. The head is going to be made out of wool. Wool absorbs water much better than anything else, and on sinking flies, it's just a perfect material. The eyes are going to be lead eyes. This does 2 things. It enables this fly to sink very well, and we can control the depth with the size of the lead eye that we use. The other thing is that we get an undulating action when we locate the eyes in this position. Let's use flat wax nylon floss. We'll start our jam knot right behind the eye, and we'll continue back to halfway down the bend of the hook. And we'll come back up to the point on top of the hook shank opposite the point of the hook. We'll spin our thread so it'll be flat when we put the weed guard on. We'll use hard mason weed guard. We'll hold it up there and we'll just capture the tip of our hard mason. Take a couple of wraps, and what we want to do is we want to pull up on our monofilament. As we pull up, we'll wrap back. This way we can write this monofilament very easily every time on top of the hook shank. We'll wrap it back to the midpoint and then come forward to our tie-in area. We'll tie off here. We'll change to 3/0 thread, put our jam knot in the same place. Okay, let's select about a half a dozen immature turkey feathers. These are called blood feathers. What we're looking for a blood feather that the stem is not too substantial. That way we'll get much more movement in the water. We'll take this blood feather and we'll clip the stem out. This stem kind of keeps the feather from moving in the water. Now this way, after we do that, this feather will really undulate in the water, and that's what we're looking for. Let's even about 6 of these up by the tips on our leg, and we'll grasp them and just kind of pull them together. And about 1.5 times the hook shank length is the length that we want to tie on there. So we can measure on that hook shank length, and the hook is what we want to use the whole way through for our measurements. We'll set it down to our tie-in point, which is the part of the hook right above the point of the hook. Okay, take a couple of wraps around there, kind of tight. Raise the butts up and we'll cut these off at an angle. Now we'll overwrap all of this and we'll get a good tie-in. Okay, we'll come forward. We'll put about 10 to 12 strands of crystal flash on here. We'll pull these out with our scissors, just a few at a time. One of the neat things about crystal flash, this kind of gets to be unruly once in a while if you leave it out of the package. What you want to do is you want to take your crystal flash and you'll cut a little V in the package. That way, when you bring the crystal flash out, most of it will stay in the package and you just can bring out enough that you want to use. And we'll cut about 10 strands off. Now we'll wrap these strands right around our thread. Grab the other side of the crystal flash, bring them up right on top of the hook shank, and then over wrap. We'll trim, and then we'll pull them to each side and just kind of preen as we go. Okay, let's select the saddle feathers for the body. These are the neat thing, one of the neat things about feathers for bass flies, they don't have to be the really expensive ones. This is a number 2 or number 3 Metz. Now it's dyed to the color that we want. We'll select about 3 of these feathers. We want one with fuzz right at the bottom of the feather. We'll just pluck 3 out. Okay, we want to leave some of the fuzz right down at the base of the feather. So we'll cut these off, we'll strip a little bit of it off, and we'll bring all the stems together, and we'll just tie them on all at one time. Take several wraps and secure the feather in. We'll come forward to half of the hook shank, and we'll just, right there. Now we'll cement all at one time. I use Dave's Flex Cement to cement all of my underbodies and almost all of my cementing techniques, period. Okay, we'll grab these and we'll just palmer them forward. And you can just grab them all at one time. And again, we'll just palmer them forward, making a nice movable body. If you let one go like I just did, just take a wrap around, grab it, and continue wrapping. And we'll over-wrap with thread using our left hand. Trim the tips. Pull back and do a couple of wraps. Now at this time we want to change thread, so I'll do a whip finish right in front. We'll change threads, change from 3/0 to a size A monocord. This will enable us to have a more substantial thread, tie on the lead eyes with, and to do our wool work with. Advance the thread about halfway up the hook shank, which is about 2 lengths of the eye behind the eye of the hook. We have 3 sizes of lead eyes that we can use on this fly: a small, medium, and large. The large, we can fish the deeper water to the shallower water with the small. Let's use the small eye on this. We'll mount this, we'll put the little bar of the dumbbell eye right on top of the hook shank, and we'll take a couple of wraps. Now we'll come under the hook shank and through the opposite way. Okay, now we'll exit. To exit with the thread, we'll go under the hook shank, cross the bar to the opposite side, under the hook shank, cross the bar to the opposite side. And we'll do this several times. Now we'll wrap around the base, which is between the dumbbell and the hook shank, to tighten these X wraps. And every time we'll just tighten it. Go around, tighten, around, and tighten. Okay, now we'll come back to our original point to tie in the wool. This is regular lamb's wool on the skin. First thing we want to do is we want to take either a carding comb or some kind of brush. These can usually be bought at any pet store. And comb this wool out. Get all the kinks out of it. We grab a clump about the size of a number 2 pencil, clip it off. This is one of the easiest processes in fly tying, is you just take this clump, shove it on each side right around the hook shank, grasp it with your left hand, take 2 wraps with the thread around size A monocord, just tighten it, pull back in front, take a couple of wraps, advance the thread to half the distance. Take another clump about the same size, do exactly the same thing again. Just part it, just like that, shove it right around the hook shank, take a couple of wraps, tighten down, come right through the midpoint of the bar of the eye, come right in front of the eyes. Take a couple of wraps. Do the same thing again with the wool, same size, maybe not quite as much on the front. And we'll just clip it off just a little bit on each side, shove it right around the hook shank, grasp it with the left hand, make 2 wraps, pull back and then tie right in front. Okay, at this time we're going to trim the head. Now the eyes, we're going to use the eyes as a reference. Okay. We just bring your scissors in here, pull the back up, and just take 1 clip, just as such. Rotate your vise around a little bit, and again use the eyes as your reference point. Cut straight back on each side. And the bottom, we'll taper the bottom. I like to take the fly out of the vise to trim it. Now we have all these edges. We're just going to trim it off and round them up. And just rotate it and trim as we go around. Pull the wool away from the hackle where we don't trim our hackle off too. Okay, after we've trimmed it where you really like it, let's put it back in the vise and we'll tie off our weed guard. Bring the monofilament weed guard through the eye of the hook, pull the wool back, take about 3 wraps around the hook shank and adjust it where there's about 3/16 of an inch between the monofilament weed guard and the point of the hook. And this will keep us from getting tangled up. Pull the weed guard back over the top, overwrap it with thread. We'll whip finish. Trim our thread. Trim our weed guard. Okay, now that we've got this fly tied, let me take it out of the vise and show you how this weed guard works. Now, weed guard works when it goes over timber or logs by compression straight to the point of this monofilament. When it goes in the bass mouth, the bass takes, the weed guard is pulled to the side when you strip the fly and the point can get into the bass's mouth.